You think that art could be a cultural weapon, and why and how?
So the United States thought that art could be a cultural weapon in the Cold War, which I find so wonderful. And I'm so nostalgic for a time when the United States would have thought that art could be a cultural weapon. I think art has great possibilities to change how people think and how they see the world. It's kind of like the visual soundtrack of our lives. Um, but it turns out that in 1964, during the Cold War, that the USIA, the United States Information Agency, and the United States government actually thought it could change hearts and minds.
Would you consider that naive or? But I think that through art you can change minds, maybe. No?
I totally believe that through art you can change minds, but for the US government to think so, I am nostalgic for that time.
And do you think that what was the role of the USIA, considering it's very strange that the US doesn't have a Secretary of Culture, or is one of the few countries that don't have that institution.
Isn't that strange? I mean, I think that that says a lot about how art is valued in those circles. I think I agree with Rauschenberg, who at the end of the film, Robert Rauschenberg, who becomes the hero of this film, I agree with him when he was asked, do you think art can change the society? And he said, well, of course it can. It has for thousands of years. I don't know why one more day would make a difference. I think that art shows people how to think. It opens their intuition. It shows them different ways of looking at the world around them. It transports them out of themselves. It is a wonderful vehicle for change.
So, Amei, why did you decide to give part of your talent and your capacity as a filmmaker to this topic?
Well, I've always, most of my career, I was an art critic. And as an art critic, I found it very important to show the ways in which art was embedded in life and life was embedded in art, to show that it wasn't just this niche thing off in a corner, but that actually it plays a role in so many parts of our lives. And so when I was making films, that became an important thing to me as well. I had just made a film about the Soviet-born artist, Stalinist-born artist in the Stalin times, born in the Ukraine in 1933 when Stalin was starving the Ukraine. And he had become the great artist from the Soviet period, Ilya Kabakov. And he went back to Russia and kind of relived his past. And I had just made a film about that side of the Iron Curtain in the Cold War. And when a producer suggested to me, she said, I was at the 1964 Venice Biennale, I thought, that is a story that says it all from our point of view. Because it was kind of an urban legend. It was something I kind of knew about since I'd been in the art world.
Would you say that Robert Rauschenberg was part of the Renaissance movement of art in America or in the world? He brought really new ways of expressing, I guess.
Well, so, America, well, the reason that the State Department was so intent on having us win the prize at the Venice Biennale was because our America was seen as a nation without culture. We Coca-Cola and, money and cars, but not art. And we needed to prove that we had great art. And the first movement that was considered a great movement in America was abstract expressionism that rose up in the 40s, and the government tried to use that. Not the artists. The artists never were political in that way, but the government tried to use it. But Rauschenberg turned all of that upside down. He was not making art from inside, expressing inside. He was saying, look at the world around you. Look at the richness of the world around you. And I'm going to put everything in that world, everything from my time into my paintings. If it's a pail on the street, if it's a stuffed goat I find, if it's an old quilt, like an unmade bed, anything can become art. And I hope it's going to give you a different way of looking, open your eyes and giving you a different way of looking at the world. And that was a shocker in those days. It was happening in other parts of the world. It was happening in other parts of the world, but this exhibition in Venice, not just of Rauschenberg, but of the generation. He was a precursor of pop art, but it was also pop art. That kind of cemented the US as a leader, maybe a little unfairly.
That's when New York substituted Paris as the center of art, maybe in that period.
It's when we took credit for it. It had been happening since World War II, but that's when we took credit for it. And I will say right now, I'm not sure there's commercial centers of art, but I'm not sure there is a center of art. I think art springs up all over.
Like, would you say, yeah, in Asia too, in the Pacific, in Los Angeles, London?
Everywhere, and in Africa, everywhere, India, everywhere.
Would you say that Robert was the representative of the American dream, or he was trashing the American dream, or he was defending it, or he was just exposing it?
He was making art about the world in which we lived. And the US government decided that he expressed the American dream because he expressed the freedom of expression here. The fact that anything goes, any idea you have, anything you want to do, it's fine with us. So that was the part of the American dream that the government was conscious of his expressing. I'm not sure he thought that way.
But it was yeah, but it's very free. I thought it was very liberating to see this artist doing things that were so unorthodox. And he was supported by the government, I mean, by the State Department. It's amazing in a way. So the State Department wanted to win the cultural war if there was one, right? I guess.
There was a cultural war. There were hearts and minds in play. We had to convince the Europeans that we were a nation of culture. It wasn't just the Soviets who had culture. So there were big stakes in actual fact. I'm thinking, I know I'm going off topic, but I'm thinking about this whole subject of Rauschenberg bringing the world in. One of the first pieces he did where he did this, when he was still in his 20s, he painted just white panels, just painted white panels. And the whole point was a leaf would fall on them, a shadow would pass, a twig would do something. Whatever the real world was doing was actually the subject of those paintings, not the paintings themselves. And John Cage, who was there with him, very soon after that wrote 433, which is where a pianist sits at a piano, closes it, and sits for 4 minutes, 33 seconds. And whatever you hear, a truck going by, people coughing, people getting angry, whatever it was, that was what that piece was about. And as he continued, more and more of the world came into his art.
I love the white painting, because also through the reflection of light, those reflections became the art, I guess, right? So
absolutely.
It was amazing. Tell me a little, how did you choose the people that participated in the documentary? Like Mark, I love him.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark, continue, yeah.
No, I love him. He was my friend. I used to live in LA and I was friend with him before he became this big artist.
He's wonderful. He's just wonderful. And on our DVD, we've got a much longer interview with him. I think he's one of the great artists of our time. I've always admired him. And luckily, when we were filming in Venice in 2017, he was representing the United States. So I had a reason to interview him, and I was very happy about that. The other artist, I used Shireen Nishat because she has such admiration for Rauschenberg as an activist, and I have such admiration for her. She's Iranian born. But the other people, I found as many people as I could who were alive, who had been there in 1964. That was very important. I interviewed people who wrote books about it. And I tried to, and any artist. Well, Christo was there, actually.
Christo was there.
Michelangelo Pistoletto was there. Carolee Schneemann was there. So any artist I could find, or anyone I could find who was there, and anyone who had written about it or thought about it or had something to say.
Visually, it's very rich. How did you access to all of that archival material, which was, I thought it was really cool. Like Venice at the time, moving all the paintings from the consulate, I mean, from the US location to the consulate and all that is very cool.
So moving the paintings, you thought that was archival, huh?
I thought
That
so,
was a
yeah.
that was my recreation.
I
So,
saw, I thought it was archival.
so it says at
So
the
that's
end that it's
good.
a
That's good
recreation.
for you.
Yes. Well, part of it was that we cut it. We played with the color to make it more yellow, as if it was from the time, but we were very clear at the end that it was a recreation. So I knew I had a film when I found these photographs that Hugo Mulas, who was a wonderful photographer at the time, took photographs of the paintings being transported by boat and being loaded onto the boats. And I thought, hey, I've got a film. And we used those photographs, but then I created recreations from those photographs. And the recreations are in color. I needed color. Hey, I needed color because there's so much archival. We used 1,000 bits of archival, whether it was a letter or a photograph or screen time, whatever it was. And we needed color.
It was great. So would you say art comes with a responsibility or not?
I don't know if I think the artists in per se, although I can name some that I don't feel that way about, are very responsible and are making art out of real belief. Does that mean there's a responsibility to society when you make an art? No, I think you make that art and then you figure out whether it has some responsibility to society.
What was the biggest satisfaction for you to bring this film out there? Now it's opening soon, so I'm sure it's great feelings.
It's scary. It's scary. I hope it finds an audience that loves it. It's gotten some wonderful reviews, so I think that's exciting. But one of the things was I grew in respect for Rauschenberg in making this film. I mean, he was an extraordinary human being, and that was wonderful. But I'm very happy to bring this out right now because I think it is a film about art that leaps into the real world. And we went to great lengths to do that, and I hope it does. I hope it's fun to watch.
Thank you very much. I just have to say that, yeah, I had a great time. I loved it. I learned a lot. And yeah, it was beautifully done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good day.
Thanks so much.